Do you have to work really hard to be poor and alone in life? So I want to talk about that today. This is newthinkingnewlife.com's podcast, and I am anonymous. Now, this is a podcast set up to help people grow as people because I lived my first 30 plus years of my life in a prison cell that was self-imposed with a life sentence that I didn't even know I gave myself. And when I found these principles, they helped save my life. So we're going to talk about whether or not you have to work really hard at being poor, broke, and alone in life. And if you guys want to go learn more about the project, go to newthinkingnewlife.com. This is where I'll put a high-tech intro that sounds really spiffy and maybe a high-price sponsor someday. Haha. Well, I'm taking massive action to make the podcast, so just excuse the quality. I'm talking into my phone because I want to get the message out. I've wanted to make this kind of thing for a long time. So do you have to work really hard at being poor and alone in broken life? Well, a little bit about me without giving away the whole entire farm. I grew up in a first world nation, but I was pretty poor as a kid with my family. Now, when I say poor as a kid with a family, I'm not talking about we were poor, didn't have a place to sleep, didn't have a place to eat. I mean, we were poor in the sense of we couldn't afford to take vacations. We had food on the table, but we didn't have cable TV. We had no luxuries in life, and life was a constant struggle from my family. And I was always taught that life was an uphill battle. You swam up the stream like a salmon, and you made sure that you didn't get eaten by a bear on the way up. And that the rich were rich. We're going to talk about whether or not the rich need to work hard to be rich at another day on another podcast, because this is not a one-shot deal. So follow or subscribe or whatever to this podcast. But we were taught that it was an uphill battle. If you didn't watch out, the bears would eat you. The bears were the rich people. Don't get taken advantage of, and always strive for success. And rely on other people, though, to give you that success, because you need the promotion, you need the this, you need the that. You know where that got me? It got me absolutely nowhere. As a matter of fact, it got me absolutely, completely depressed. I was actually diagnosed with depression as a kid, and they put me on pills. Nobody really wanted to deal with the fact that maybe I had ADHD, which doesn't, in my opinion, require many pills at all. Maybe I was just a depressed kid because my parents fought with each other incessantly and had me on the middle of the telephone line when my mom was next to me, and I would be saying, "Dad," who's on the phone with me, "Mom says you're a blankety blank." And then I'd have to hear my father. Maybe that was why I was depressed. But none of that mattered. I was taught that life was a miserable trip, and if you're lucky, at the end of it all, what do you get out of life? Here's what you get out of life if you're lucky. Are you ready for this? This is what you're working towards. Okay, you're working towards a job, working for a corporation. Hopefully you'll get a pension. Maybe a week of vacation a year, a wife that'll take care of you, look after the kids that you'll have, 2 cars that don't break down too often, a small house if you're very lucky, and maybe some money to retire with in addition to the government funds that you're going to have to live off of. But it's okay, because hopefully those kids you get will put you into a nice retirement home or take care of you someday. I wasn't raised with the idea that you're going to be able to have a mansion someday and you're going to have the nicest car you ever wanted, or 2 or 3 of them. I was raised that you will struggle. And for a long time, oh my gosh, did I ever struggle. I mean, just up until the last few years, I would walk into a big box consumer retail store like a Best Buy, which I think most people in the world know what a Best Buy is, and I would look at the items for sale on the shelf, and I would want so many items on the shelf, and the constant idea in my head was, I want it, no, I can never have it. I want it, I can't have it. I would walk into that store and walk out of the store heartbroken. And the worst part of it all was that I now had a wife in my life for several years who would also walk into stores, and she would look at things that she would want and she could never have. In her mind, she would be heartbroken. And I installed that thought in her because when I first met her, she was not that way. But after so many years of marriage, I transferred all of my negativity into her, and she started living that sense of lack too. So I was working really, really hard for a very long time to be negative, pessimistic, and blame other people and externalize for why I wasn't successful in life. But there's a difference between living life and having life live through you. So this is what I want you guys to remember. And here's an example. You've seen it before, and I'm sure you have. They lay down some new cement, concrete, asphalt, whatever. Now, what they do is they put down hot asphalt, and that's the black stuff, blacktop they call it. You know, that's what cars drive on. Maybe they help, maybe they do that or they build a sidewalk. And you come back a few weeks afterwards and through one of the little cracks in the concrete where the concrete settled because they didn't do a good job on the concrete and it wasn't, leveled off, you see a little thing breaking through, a little plant. It's a seedling, it's a tree, it's a weed. Maybe it's just a weed, but it doesn't matter because the weed wants to live. The weed is going to thrive and it's going to break through the concrete and survive. And to the weed, that's the most natural thing in the world. It works towards the light because that's where the plants grow. They go towards the sunlight. Light equals life to them, and that's how they thrive. Now, to me, it seems like I lived over 30 years of my life living in a state of negativity and constant blame of others, telling myself and telling others that I can't be successful because blank, because my boss hates me, because I don't have a car to drive to a job that's better, and I can't get a car because cars cost money, and I don't have the money for a car, and even if I had a car given to me, I don't have the money for the insurance, and I don't have the money for the gas and the registration, and my boss doesn't like me, and my coworkers are not too fond of me, and I would never look at myself and blame myself for anything because that would be even more difficult than blaming other people. So I worked really, really hard for a number of years to blame other people for my lack of success in my life. And because I did this, I struggled on a consistent basis and I let my brain create more issues and more problems to the point where I was nearly found myself, this is hard to say, it's personal. I nearly found myself quite recently in the last year in jail, incarcerated, substance abuse problems. I was drinking to get around social anxiety and issues with stress. And I was diagnosed with something from a doctor. And I thought to myself, I'm not taking those antidepressants that he's giving me because that's just dangerous. So what did I do? I drank. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because I was struggling for 30 plus years to blame everybody and live a life of anger and pessimism. I would come home at the end of the day thinking life is a struggle. I swim upstream like a salmon. I just hope that I don't have a heart attack before I can have that mediocre kind of comfort that zone that my family said exists. I hope that a bear doesn't eat me in terms of getting fired. That would be the bear eating me, getting fired by my company. And then when I nearly lost everything one night because I was just overindulging and abusing a substance to try to get around my anger, my frustration, and my fears and my anxiety, I woke up the next day and I thought to myself for the first time in my life that I was extremely lucky and fortunate that day. It might sound ridiculous, but that was the first day in my life where I thought to myself, you're alive. You still have a family. They're not too happy with you right now, but they're giving you this one last shot. And you know what? You have $50 in the bank. And I went to work and I rode past people. On my way to work, I went past people who were living in a box, living under an underpass, trying to stay dry when the rain comes and trying to stay cool when the sun is beating down on their shoulders. And they're struggling to survive in life, and here I am riding past them with nice clothes, even just $50 in the bank, which I used to complain about, but the ability to come home to a family and home to a home, not just a crash pad, not a bachelor pad. And it was that day, that moment. It was what I call my near-ending experience. Some people have a near-death experience that changes them. I had a near-ending experience because had I been called, had the police been involved, I would have gone to jail. My family would have left me. That would have been my last call for anything. And I've never been in jail in my life. Had that happened, it would have been my near-ending experience. I would have been done. I woke up grateful for the first time ever. And through a weird series of events, I'd been trying to learn internet marketing for years, and I've been doing self-help programs for years. And after a doctor told me that I have all these issues and my brain is different and take this pill, I thought to myself at that point years ago, well, this self-help stuff, it just doesn't work. It's not for me. It's for normal people. And I was even more frustrated and more angry at that point. But when that happened, when I woke up, I was grateful. I found somebody, I said, look, you ever heard of this guy, Bob Proctor? And he said, because I was looking at my Make Money Online stuff, and this person that I knew said, oh yeah, Bob Proctor, I listen to him all the time, and this guy was pretty successful. And I said, well, really? He goes, yeah, check out YouTube. And he told me the Bob Proctor course on YouTube, and that led me to the idea of the law of attraction, and I re-examined it, and I went back into the idea of living grateful. And it was funny because all at the same time in my life, all these things were lining up. So I had the gratefulness of not being in jail, of not having my family being gone, and of not being possibly dead because of my drunken antics. And the first time in my life, I had the leverage I had created to actually stop my actions, my courses, and my blaming, and my externalization, and my anger, and my fears, and just be grateful. And then I ran into this course. It had nothing to do with online marketing, but I asked somebody about it who kind of was into the self-help stuff, which I thought was for other people, not me. And he led me to another place, which led me to the idea of living life through gratitude and the law of attraction, which led me to Dr. Wayne Dyer, which led me to the idea of me being my own creator of anything that I want in my life and manifesting anything. And it's an amazing thing that for the first time in my life at this point, when this had all happened, that things were lining up for me and I didn't even have to work at them. And it all started the day that I started being grateful that I was even alive. The day that I started just being grateful to be able to wake up with a person next to me that cared about me, wasn't happy with me, but still cared about me, with a family, with a home, not a crash pad. I was just grateful to be alive, like that little tiny plant that had grown out of the concrete asphalt, blacktop, whatever you want to call it. Grateful to have what was around me. And as soon as I started being grateful, things started lining up for me. And as soon as this thing started lining up for me, I started learning more about how easy it is to just appreciate what you have and picture more of what you want in your life instead of being mad at what you don't want in your life, which is how I lived that 30 plus years of living in anger and frustration. So the number one message I'm giving you right now is that it's a lot harder to live a life of anger, frustration, lack, want, poverty, than it is to live a life of gratitude, a lack of wanting to have more of what you already have, but being grateful for what you have. You live that life where you want to help others and you want to just spread some love out to the universe and be grateful for what you have, then things will start coming to you in strange ways if you follow a certain set of rules. So that's why I'm here talking to you on this podcast. I found that in my life, it is more about living for gratitude and living grateful in the day than it is to be angry and frustrated and worried about what I don't have. And I hope that this helps people. I hope that at some point you guys discover this and maybe go check out my website, newthinkingnewlife.com, and start living that life that you thought you could never have, because we're all entitled to it. Life wants to be had, just like that little weed or that little tree that broke through the concrete that I saw. And as soon as you start living that way, you're going to have everything that you ever wanted and a lot more, but you have to be grateful for what's in front of you right now. So I'm Anon Admin, and this is newthinkingnewlife.com podcast. This is our first podcast. This is where a clever, fancy outro would go, but I don't have one of those, so we'll just take massive action and finish up here recording this on my phone. Subscribe, like, share, whatever people do with podcasts. We'll be making a lot more of these, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.